Welcome everyone. This is going to be a panel discussion with Jessica Greene, Natalie Pistunovich, and Ronna Steinberg. They're all Glorious Gophers based in Berlin, and we're going to be chatting a little bit about the Berlin Go scene, the community, different use cases of Go, as well as some unexplored avenues to drive development in Go. But before we dive in, I'm just going to take a moment to introduce our three wonderful women joining us. Firstly, we have Natalie. Natalie is a very good question asker, so she might be jumping in with a few questions as we have this chat. She's also a learner, a Google developer expert for Go, an open AI ambassador, a public speaker, and a sailor. She started as a hardware developer at Intel, then moved to Berlin and turned to software engineering developing in Go. Then she moved to Kenya to be a co-founder of a mobile startup, which was, in her words, a beautiful failure. Then she came back to Berlin to be an engineering manager, and now she's a lead developer advocate at the database company Aerospike. In her free time, she organizes conferences such as GopherCon Europe, Cloud9, which is an SRE DevOps conference, Hey AI, and B-Side Berlin, which is a security conference. She's also part of the Berlin chapter of the Go and Women Tech Makers user groups. Her hobbies include sailing, growing plants, and wondering if there's life on Mars. Welcome, Natalie. Very excited to have you.
Thank you, Angelica. It's great to be here.
Second up, we have Ronna, who after 20 years in tech knows that she is the sum of the opportunities that were given to her, which is why she wants everyone to hire juniors, because in her words, juniors are just seniors in the making. She's a senior software developer at Delivery Hero, a Google developer expert for Go, a Women Who Go organizer, a diversity scholarship distributor, and a Go Time Unpopular Opinion Hall of Famer. She enjoys solving problems and waiting anxiously to go back to scuba diving when the pandemic ends. Welcome, Ronna. Next up, we have Jessica, who, having explored a career as a camera assistant in film and television and as a specialty coffee roaster and barista, she made the decision to retrain in 2017 and add programming to her skill set. She joined the team at Ecosia, the search engine that plants trees, in 2018 to use her new skills to help plant trees globally. She's self-taught and community-taught developer, and she organizes events and is involved in initiatives that support women and gender minorities in making the move into tech. Wonderful to have you, Jessica. I'm very excited you're part of this.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to dive right in. So you're all in the Berlin Go community. I'm interested to hear, does Berlin have something to do with you all moving into Go and becoming Gophers? Or was that just kind of serendipity and coincidence? Maybe Ronna, I could turn to you first.
Well, the second that I moved to Berlin, I also became a Gopher. So I guess for me, that kind of makes sense. As it turns out, the organizer then, or co-organizer, Natalie is co-organizer of GDG Golang Berlin, convinced my boss, who was a colleague of mine, convinced my boss that Go is the only thing worth doing. I had other opinions, and I basically had a very interesting conversation with my manager, where he told me, well, you know, that time that I told you that you can select whatever technology that you wanted for this project that you're starting, you meant you can select whatever you want as long as it's Go. And I was on my probation. so my choice was essentially made for me, and the rest is history. Here I am.
And how about you, Jessica? I'm interested, how did you become a Gopher? Was it also linked to your move to Berlin?
So for me, it wasn't linked to the move to Berlin because I was already in Berlin before I got into tech. But it was very much linked to the other glorious gals that go in this call. So I first found out about Go, or first discovered Go, through one of the Women Who Go meetups, which was the Ultimate Go by Bill Kennedy. I just did Ultimate Services, which is why it's like stuck in my head. Both amazing workshops. And it was, for me, like that click moment of, I really like this and I want to get involved in it. And the community was incredibly supportive. Ronna personally has been incredibly supportive. It was through a Women Who Go meetup that I got introduced to the company where I now work. So for me, I don't know specifically if it was about Berlin, but it was certainly about the community in Berlin that got me to go.
Awesome. And Natalie, how did Go come into your world?
Definitely from the move to Berlin, or because of it. One of the company that I started working at told me that they are a Go shop. And if I want to work there, I can either go the path of being a developer, DevOps, or sysadmin, and alternatively it's doing Go. So I went for Go. And at the time it was 2014 or 15. So at the time it was very early in the Go life, but they were already adopting it. Actually, they started with it 2013 or so, when Go was in the second year or so. And that's how I found myself doing Go. And from there, it was just, I was picking the companies by their Go stack.
I mean, I feel like you've all spoken about how the community in Berlin really helped either get you into it, or it was already existent and then you got pulled into working in Go. I'd love to hear whether you think there's something unique, special, different about the Go community in Berlin. And as I know, there's a rich culture globally of Gophers. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about your perspective on what is unique, or if there is something unique about the Go culture in Berlin. Ronna?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I don't know necessarily about other communities in the world, but I do know that there is something that is interesting about Berlin, is that there are a lot of companies here with a PHP stack they're moving to Go. And I know that, for instance, where I come from Israel, not that much PHP. I don't think that I was ever poached for a PHP developer position, and here it's probably on a daily basis. Yeah, everybody's nodding because it's happened to them. Okay, so what I think happened is that it was kind of around a time where cloud computing, everybody was moving to microservices. Everybody was looking to reduce costs. Everybody was looking to, we say Go is fast. We say that Go is performant, but what we actually are saying that Go is cheap. That is the bottom line. So I think that is why Go is so strong in Berlin. I think that's why there's always this feeling that something is going on in Berlin around Go. I don't have other communities to compare it to, but it definitely feels like a Berlin thing for me.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go.
I actually was thinking a lot about this question, and I think one of the things that does make Berlin Go scene special for Women Who Go specifically is that we have Ronna, and the way that she teaches Go. Yeah, it's like, it really, every time I think about it and talk to other people, it really makes me appreciate more and more that style, because what we would do at Women Who Go meetups is have have a project that essentially has like fill in the blanks. So it's like failing tests, and then you need to fix it and make it work. And I think this is such a great way to learn like any language. But I think for Go, it works incredibly well. And I think there's a lot people could learn, like other communities could learn from this. So I do think that's something quite special that we have in Berlin.
I think that Go managed to catch here quite well in Berlin, because it used to be, at least before it became the tech hub that it is now, it was a hacky place. And a decade ago, when Go was released, this was adopted. One of the first user groups of Go was here in Berlin. It started in 2011, and it's a just group of people who like the language and just got together and started hacking together and doing things with the language. And they were the early adopters that were giving the feedback and were creating interesting things with it. And I think that is also some of the things that as those people matured and went to work in bigger companies or built their own companies or whatnot, they brought Go with them, and just because they were among the early adopters.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you all do specifically in Berlin in Go, both in terms of like what you do in your day-to-day job, but I know you're also, you know, as has been mentioned, very involved in the community and building the community and making it better. So perhaps I could jump to you first, Ronna. What do you do at work? Do you use Go still in your day-to-day job? And would love to hear a little bit more about how you're involved in the Go community.
So at my workplace, a delivery hero, I make sure that alongside your food, you will also get your receipts. And well, and how we do this, we do it with Go. Right now, at the moment, for instance, I am deprecating a legacy system that is written in PHP also, yet another one, and moving it to Go. We work with we work on top of we work with microservices, event-based microservices, APIs, HTTP APIs, and a little bit of gRPC actually that has recently entered the company on top of AWS, Kubernetes, Terraform. Well, it's not on top of Terraform, using Terraform. Yeah, I think, well, if we're looking at tools that we're working on, a lot of the tools that we're working with, that we're using, or written in Go, which I feel like it drives the community forward. And I wanted to point something out that, you know, despite Go being really the #1 infrastructure as a service, platform as a service language, when you actually examine it, it wasn't necessarily the obvious choice. It wasn't necessarily, I remember people complaining about how locking a Go routine to a thread is very difficult and tedious, and, you know, a bunch of edge cases that the language does have, and yet they made it work, and they made it work very, very, very well. And I think, you know, it's a main driving force in the language, and it is very, very interesting also to see this sort of growth over time, and to see how we've changed how we do things because of those people.
I mean, speaking a beat longer on that, you talked about how you've changed the use of Go. I mean, I'd love to hear maybe just a little bit more about the trends you've seen in terms of the use of Go, whether it be in your day-to-day or at your company more broadly.
So since there is one, I think, developer advocate here who is actually working on open source, and I think really, and she's been around this community, well, actually longer than me, a few months, but longer than me. I think she would be a very, very good person to refer that question to. So, Natalie.
Referred. Natalie, tell us.
I mean, what exactly are we asking?
I mean, what trends have you seen in terms of the use of Go? I'd love to hear more about kind of what you specifically work on, but I would say first, just as you've been in the Go community, as you've seen changes in the way people use Go, individuals, companies use Go, have there been any outstanding trends and changes in the use that you've observed?
So we're talking about the past.
Yes.
Past trends.
Yeah.
I was time traveling here. It was confusing. And yeah, Go started as a language of those people who were gathering together in hacker spaces and doing stuff for fun, right? And not just in Berlin, but also. And it got more mature. The users of the language became people with not 1-2 years experience, but 5 and more. 20 as some job descriptions ask, of course. And it also means that the language became more mature, and it means, or what it doesn't mean, but it happened that larger corporations adopted this language, and it comes with a more stability, right? Now we're trying to be more careful not to break things, and the community is changing the character of itself. It's no longer just people who are doing it for fun, it's people whose boss told them to do that. And on the other side of all that, there's also an interesting trend that Go is becoming very much the tool to use, or the language to use for creating DevOps tools, right? It's not just for the web servers and applications and so on. It's also the language that Kubernetes is built in, and Docker is built in, and Jaeger and Prometheus, and so many DevOps tools are relying on it. So this is also a systems language, and that's another interesting trend.
So what do you do in Go? Tell us, what has been your experience? What are you working on in the Go community at the moment?
For at work, what I do is, as Ronna was hinting, I'm a developer advocate at Aerospike. Aerospike is a database company that is not written in Go, but it has a Go client, and the most starred client of the different 10 or 15 clients that we have is the Go one. So it helps me to pitch the focus on the language more, and the fact that the recent additions we were creating for that, for example, the Kubernetes operator and so on, also uses Go. That also helps me bring more focus on the language. An interesting place that we are in with Go is that a lot of the clients that we have who use Go are not yet using modules, or just recently migrated to that. So the client, in order not to break things off what the clients or users are actually doing with the database, the Go client was not supporting modules until very recently. So that's an interesting place to be, because it means it breaks the documentation, and most of the information you find online for the newer versions is not fully relevant. You have to kind of figure out how to do things with it to make it work for not having modules and so on. Yeah, those are interesting things that I'm doing at work with Go. And for fun, in my free time, I am working on a tool that explains Go code, not just Go code, but also Go code. Sorry for the buzzword, using AI. And it's basically, you give it a code snippet, and it gives you a paragraph that explains what it does. And maybe you as a product manager find it interesting. Who also likes
That's
code.
awesome. We have to chat more about that. That sounds amazing. I mean, also, for those of you attending who love hearing interesting people talking about interesting things, Natalie forgot to mention that she also has a rather big event coming up that is to do with the Go community, GoPacon Europe. So if you want to hear more wonderful women, as well as others who are not wonderful women but are still wonderful, I would very much encourage you to check out GoPacon Europe. I don't know whether, Natalie, you want to talk a little bit about that. I personally think it's worth a mention. I think it's a brilliant event that really helps build community, teach. I know you have some workshops going on as well, and you have this whole mentorship scheme going on. I'd love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, it's happening next week, 26th, 7th, and 8th of August. And we start with a day of workshops. One of the workshop instructors just happens to be the previous speaker, Anna. And in addition to Anna's workshop about security, there are 2 additional workshops. One is mentored by Bill and is done in collaboration with Ian. And the other one is done by Johnny and organized and is co-organized or co-given with Kevin. You know Johnny and Bill, probably. You don't know yet Kevin and Ian, but you should go and check out the workshop descriptions. I think they're interesting people who you probably will be seeing around the Go community more. And yeah, second year that we're online. So thanks to Ronna, who is heading our diversity scholarships, we get to have 50 people who received the diversity scholarship and will be joining us. And in comparison to whoever who's watching us, there's a sign language simultaneous translation, mirror and also non-mirrored. And we have, second year that this is online. So in addition to having more people that we managed to bring on board, we also bring a little more of our expertise and fun things that we're doing, like a selfie booth and like a coloring pages. Thank you for asking about that.
That's awesome. Well, it's a great event, and I feel like I if it wasn't mentioned by you, I was gonna mention it.
Can I mention another interesting thing?
You can mention whatever you would like, Natalie.
So Angelica and me happen to be podcaster hosts, how do you call that, on a very fun podcast about Go that is called Go Time. And it's also a channel in the Gophers Slack, where you all have joined probably to follow the content of the stream. And it's happening on Tuesdays in evening European time and morning American time, but you can also hear the recordings at any other time that you feel like hearing. And every time it's a different topic and it's very interesting. And Angelica is a great host, not just here, but also at the podcast.
I appreciate that. I would also say, a side note, if any of you would like to speak or get involved on a podcast or in these kind of events or in GoForCon Europe, please, ping any or all of us. We are all involved in some way in that kind of thing. I feel like this has gone from a deep dive into the uses of Go to a community promo moment. So thank you so much. I would love to now hear a little bit more about our wonderful third panelist today, Jessica. What do you do in your day-to-day?
So in the day-to-day, it's mainly a little similar to what Ronna was talking about. Like we use a lot of microservices, and we use Go. I feel like that decision was made in the company before I joined, but I feel it was like, a passion. Someone had a passion for Go and kind of got it into the company, and that's only grown. We've since hired many really interesting Gophers, and I think really expanded upon our knowledge of Go in the company, which makes it a very exciting place to work. Something that we actually have in our legacy Go stack, because we have a legacy Go stack and a newer stack, which Ronna's pointed out to me a few times is very interesting and somewhat unusual, is that we're using templating for our server-side rendering. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do with the templates, and actually Women Who Go had this workshop around using Go templates, which was actually how I got first introduced to the company, Ecosia, where I now work. But since I kind of joined, we've been migrating away to that, because we've moved from a monolith to this microservice architecture, and with that kind of built a front end that's more Node and Vue.js based. But we're also running on Kubernetes, so I also get to touch a lot of these kind of infrastructure tools that were mentioned before as well.
Awesome. I would love to hear a little bit about what Go is not great at. We've talked a lot about how you will use Go in your day-to-day, the things you like to do with it, but I'd love to hear kind of the areas in which maybe Go is not the ideal solution, or areas in which you wish kind of there was more use of Go. Maybe I can pass over to Ronna on this one.
So there are multiple things that I would like to see Go, a bunch of communities that I would love to see Go integrated in are Internet of Things, communities, industries, entire industry, let's say, because I'm ambitious that way. So Internet of Things, machine learning, and AI, if we're going to use buzzwords. And so, talking about stuff that is very interesting that people have done with Go that not a lot of us, and yes, also obviously web. So what I found really interesting about what Ecosia was doing with server-side rendering of HTMLs was that, for most people, when you go, you don't expect that from Go. You kind of expect that, when you work with Python, when we work with Ruby, this Rails new that basically creates an entire website for you, a web app website for you with server-side rendering is great to start out with. And I wish more people had that experience with Go. And in the past few years, like since Go WebAssembly was released, Go WASM, we see a lot of that as well. And we see people sort of playing with it, trying to create games with it, which is really, really interesting. So I would love to be able to, I would love to see front-end developers developing in Go, because they just could, that would be amazing, right? And lastly, like if we're talking about stuff that is interesting that people have been doing with Go, I will never forget. So the first GopherCon Europe was in Iceland. And I was so head deep in the diversity scholarships. I had no idea about the lineup, what the talks are going to be. And then somebody got up on stage and talked about how to render fake objects into an image using Go. And Natalie informs me that that was Hunter Loftus. I'm hoping that I am pronouncing his name correctly. Yes, I'm getting a yes, so that's good. And I'm not going to get into that because I will never do this talk justice. Just, you can find it on YouTube. So just go and do it. Worth every second. Especially because the entire thing started, my favorite thing started with a hello world, which is how all applications should start, with a simple hello world. That is when you know that you have something in your hand. So yeah, that is for me. I get really excited about the possibilities. Also, by the way, like this is why my workshops are built the way that they are. I go to different companies. We come up with different ideas and different challenges from topics that a company has worked with. So we get a lot of inspiration from the industry in our workshop, which is really, really nice. And I have to say that I've been around this industry for a while, but I was blown away by what people actually do with Go, but also what people actually do, which is kind of, it's insane. And really, if you look around you, you'll be amazed by what people actually do in their day-to-day.
I mean, going off the back of that, I would love to hear maybe, Natalie, some of the things you've kind of tried out in your free time, little mini apps you might have done, because I know you've done a few little fun ones that I'm sure would be interesting to chat about a little bit.
It's something that Go is not necessarily used for.
Yeah, that you've just tried it out and found it was fun to experiment with, but maybe you found yourself surprised at how it was in fact applicable.
The Go mobile thing support library, call it how you wish. So it lives under the X folder, which means full disclosure, this is starting as an experimental thing. This is not promised to be stable, no promises, it's just people trying around. And I took those experiments of those people and tried or had an idea of building an app, and it doesn't work. I managed to go as far as create something that a screen that has a shape that just moves around and changes colors. It touches the edges of the screen, which is pretty much following the demo example. I think I managed to compile it for Android, and it didn't work for iOS at all. And I gave talk about that and on how I had plans for that and how that did not work out in Golang UK 2017, I think. And also one of the less good talks that I gave, I think. Very proud of good talks that I'm giving and very proud of not great talks that I'm giving. If anybody needs a motivation to go and give a talk and live with the fact that you have good and bad talks of you out there, just go there, watch that, laugh at me, tell me later. We can laugh about that together. But also hear what how I experimented with it and what I was thinking to do about that. And I think it never picked up, and that's fine. Go is great for all sorts of things, like web, like systems, and not great for other things like mobile.
I mean, I think that's really interesting. I would love to hear, maybe Jessica, have you had any instances where you've experimented with Go and found that it didn't work and you just kind of were like, oh God, like this didn't work at all? Or you kind of experimented, tried it out and found, again, to your surprise, like, yeah, I could make this work. I didn't realize that this could be used in this way, but this is fun.
I think every time I like play around with Go, outside of work, no, inside of work also, actually, it makes me like realize how much more there is than like what I'm using it for on a daily basis, which is very exciting, but also kind of like slightly intimidating at the same time. Like one of the first projects I worked on, I think one of the first talks that I gave was around this toy project where I was taking tweets that I was sending out for the 100 Days of Code challenge. And I was then trying to essentially reformat the tweets into Markdown to save them in a GitHub repo, because that's what you're supposed to do as like the homework of this challenge. And I wanted to automate it. And I think I got something working, but then someone in the audience had given me some really good tips around the templating library, actually, now that I think about it, that was just like so beyond what I had imagined I would be able to do myself. So I think like, yeah, my experience has mainly been this. One of the things that I really like tweaking with and would like to spend more time doing is the kind of microcontroller area. So I really love the TinyGo and the GoBot things. We did a Women Who Go workshop on this as well, which was a few years ago now. And I think it's actually been expanded upon a lot, but I haven't had that much free time, shockingly, of late to get more into it, but I would love to explore this area more.
That's awesome. I mean, do you feel like there have been certain like projects or certain places, resources that you've used when you've been diving into TinyGo that you found especially useful? I mean, it's certainly an area like I think is fascinating and I would love to dive into, that we can maybe share with those listening. You can ping it in the Gopher Slack.
Yeah, I can definitely send some links in the Gopher chat. I mean, for me, it's like I just want to like make lights, LEDs, link. Like I'm already amazed by that, but like I kind of like all the home automation stuff, and a lot of that I have seen done with more like Python. So I think it's like really cool to have the option to be able to do that in Go as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Well, we've kind of talked about what we've seen in the past. We've talked about what you're doing now. I'd love to now turn to the future. Like, what do you think we should look to be using Go more in going forward? What do you think? How do you think the use of Go in the Go community is going to change looking forward? I will not hold you accountable to anything you say. This is your personal views, what you think. Maybe Ronna, I'll kick it over to you. What are your predictions for the future?
Well, as all three of you know, I challenged Ron Evans, who is behind GoCV, for computer vision and GoBot, and I think 1 million devices in support in TinyGo to train a zombie bot to eat brains, because the apocalypse should start from bored gophers. So remember where you heard it first. So that is
almost
my
like Furbies.
answer.
It's almost like Furbies.
I'm sorry, you were expecting a serious answer, weren't you?
No, that was great. I mean, I can just imagine these. Well, I have in my mind these robotic zombies crawling around the streets and freaking everyone out. And then secretly there's like a gopher inside.
It would be amazing. And we will alert the community to go to a desert island somewhere so that, you know, we're all safe. But yeah. I think this is a good ending. It's way better than a pandemic, for sure. So
for sure. How about you, Jessica? Are there areas that you would love to see go expand into that you're not maybe seeing at the moment?
I think one of the things that interests me, and I know like it doesn't only interest me, I think both Natalie and Ronna are interested in it, and know Ronna and I specifically have also spoken a lot about it, but it ties really well into Natalie's project that she mentioned earlier, is around like teaching Go and learning Go and having tooling around making Go easier to understand. So I do see like there's a lot more possibility for maybe like boot camps built around Go, or even in the like school age range, where, you know, at the moment there's other languages taught, Golang could potentially have space there. Yesterday I was listening to the like panel discussion that had Steve Francia in it, and he was mentioning that this is something the Go team are actually working on around documentation and learning tools. So I think that's kind of really cool that the Go team are actually also working on that, because I think that's something that we within our community also on that micro level are trying to do. And the other thing I thought is quite interesting space where I've not really seen Go much is like the digital art space. So like kind of seen a lot of stuff with the coding and DJing, but it's been predominantly like JavaScript or Python, or like visual arts. I think net art, you know, going back to the templates, there could be like, and this talk that you shared, Ronna, that looks amazing. I think there could be, you know, some real creativity points where Go isn't expected, but could be really good to see it there.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of Go and art, there is a very interesting talk coming up in GopherCon Europe by Preslav. I'm sharing the link to him, to the tweet that he made about that in the Slack channel. And he is creating art with Go. And he's creating a pretty art, like abstract and interesting. I find it really cool. So I love this prediction of yours, Jessica. I absolutely hope it will go that way.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
I mean, Natalie, any predictions?
I mean, a lot has been said, but an interesting thing that I learned is that SpaceX is using Go. So I don't know the name of the field. Like space engineering is not exactly that, but space development, something like this, whatever it will be named in the upcoming years. There is a place for Go there among all the other languages, definitely, because it's fast and it's reliable. And I hope to go to space.
Maybe that's something you can, your next move in your vast career journey, maybe into space travel. That would be awesome. So I feel like in these strange times that we're still living in, I can't not ask about this weird and pandemic that we're currently going through and have been going through for the last year and a half. I would love to hear a little bit about how you've seen this kind of remote global pandemic affecting the Go community, the work you're doing, how it's affected like open source contribution, how has it affected like connecting with your fellow Gophers? Because I mean, speaking just personally, I feel like there's been a lot of pluses in that I've definitely interacted more with my Gophers in other areas. I'm based in New York. I used to be I would do a lot of global reach out, but mostly my Go community was in New York. Now I find myself, given that we're all living in a remote world, interacting a lot more with the global Go community. But obviously there's also a detrimental aspect of that. I really loved kind of getting in a room, sitting together and like hacking together some like weird game or some weird little solution together. And there was real value in physically being in the room with other gophers, especially meetups as well. I kind of miss just hugging people. So I would love to hear how you found this has affected either yourself or the work you're doing in the Go community. Maybe Ronna, could pass over to you.
So February, well, was it last year? So hard to tell. Was our last meetup, and I made a point to hug everyone because I kind of had a pretty decent idea. It was very late in February. I had a pretty decent idea that there is not going to be one for a while. Just didn't expect it to be that while. So that was kind of a shock. But I think so. There are two things that I see. So for us, for instance, the in-person. So one of the goals of Women Who Go is not to be there just for existing gophers, but ideally is to increase the community, because we don't want to just we want to, if we want to change the makeup of the community, we have to bring out to people who wouldn't necessarily learn it otherwise. And so that is actually why I came up with this workshop format. It was with a very clear goal to be able to teach people as you usually, like, I learned most of what I know, I learned in the industry. I love how, in job interviews, everybody always asks me like, what books I've read. All honesty, everything, most of the important things that I've actually learned that one would want to hire me to do is stuff that I learned at work, as most people do. It is when you put something, there is no parallel to putting something in production. And I want to give that experience to people who don't know anything about Go, that they can go away with something that they have learned, that they know how to do end to end, and in any kind of setup. And this is very, very hard to do remotely. However, I do see that certain communities, such as Natalie's, are flourishing. So I'm going to give her the stage. I will say this. There is an end. We will be coming back. We will be stronger than ever. So just you wait. I really, really hope to bring these workshops back, and we'll see. Maybe we will have more remote people. So Natalie, maybe you want to explain what you did with your meetup group.
Ronna is doing a lot of hard work towards each meetup in creating all the content for the attendees and then going around and explaining it. Our meetup, the Go user group, the Not Women Who Go user group, is a lot less work. And it's a lot easier on the organizer. So it's completely unfair comparison in the work, in the preparation, in the effort of creating it, and in the value that the attendees get. The Go user group is just 2 talks every month. We have a regular date, so it's always the second Wednesday of the month. Always 2 talks. Always between them there is an open mic session where you can tell us that you're looking for a job, looking to hire your colleagues when Parallel Team or so is hiring, or you're looking for a project, or you're looking for a project to contribute to, or something like this. But you have 20 seconds to speak about Go, whatever you want, and 2 talks by other people. And now that we made this only online, many people are able to join. And because evening in Europe is night in most bigger parts of Asia, let's say, and morning in bigger parts of the US. It's a very convenient time for most of the globe to join. And making this a regular thing is also very helpful. So I started being an organizer at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And since then, we've been meeting once a month. And even when the pandemic started, we just said we're moving to online, and then you can see in the description that we say until spring, until summer, until next year, until following spring, probably until summer, maybe until the end of 21, but we still do the same thing in a, you can laugh that this is a very German thing to do, but it works, it's convenient for people, and we are happy when we have people like Ronna and Jessica join, and we would love for everybody to join. And next event is in June, it's very soon.
I mean, thinking about, I mean, you've kind of clearly, Ronna and Natalie, been able to adapt to this in what seems like a successful fashion despite the difficulties. I would love to hear, Jessica, how you found it, but also how you've kind of stayed excited, stayed motivated. I know, especially, I mean, everyone I'm sure is dealing with, you know, burnout, dealing with lack of motivation. It's a very weird, you know, emotionally and psychologically draining time, but especially for those, I would say, like newbies coming in, trying to learn on that, and who are on that kind of upwards trajectory learning curve. Like, it's already difficult to motivate yourself when you're, you know, learning something new in technology. I mean, how do you stay motivated with that extra layer of difficulty in the environment we're living in?
I mean, I feel very lucky that I wasn't transitioning into tech in the last year, to be honest, and that it had happened just before then for me. A lot of the folks that I speak to, that it was a very different experience of not being able to meet people in person and to really get that connection, because it's quite intimidating going to groups. And like, you know, there's also a reason why women who go and the other groups aimed at like gender minorities exist, is because a lot of these groups are predominantly one group of people, and that makes it even more intimidating. And I think online there's something about it where you can hide a little bit, which is a benefit, but at the same time, because you're not visible in that way, it's very hard for people to reach out to you and offer support where you need it. I really like the GoBridge mentorship scheme that kind of started last year, as far as I remember. I didn't join that scheme as a mentor, but I did start working with someone this year, and I would very much say working with them because I've learned as much from her as she probably has learned from me. But that experience has been really amazing, because I think one-on-one, it's been a lot easier to just kind of build the trust and build the relationship, and that's what you really need. And I think that is just very difficult to do over a video camera, to be honest, especially in a group. The platforms we have are very good, but I haven't found a platform yet that really recreated that being in the room with people.
For sure. Well, we regrettably have come to time for our wonderful Women Who Go panel. I wish I could talk to you for another few hours. This has been wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciate it. And obviously for those watching, these are three, I hope, as you've seen, very welcoming, lovely ladies. Do feel free to, you know, tweet them, at them in Gopher Slack, reach out to them if you want to get involved in any of the wonderful things that they've mentioned, or you just want to chat to them because they are just wonderful human beings. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your evenings.
Thanks, Angelica.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Hiya, juniors.